What's up, guys? Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lanturn, bringing you guys our NCL Season 3 recap. What is going on? Monitor 1 capture. Get the fuck over there. There we go. Yeah, so obviously NCL Season 3 is over now. You guys won't have seen any content for a few weeks. It's because I did not make playoffs, and we'll talk about that as I get later into the video, but um, just as a summary, if you've never seen one of these videos from me before, the NCL is my league. I run it, the Nimbasa City League. This was the end of Season 3. I'm very happy to report that we're going as strong as ever, and we're expanding in Season 4 into 2 divisions. So instead of having 16 coaches, we did a small expansion in Season 3, adding 4 more coaches to the roster. And now we're adding another 12 in another division. So pretty large increase up to 28 coaches, and I'm really excited to see how it works. We're probably going to stay at that for a little while, honestly, just because I'm not super comfortable in expanding so much so quickly. I think that it leads to a lot of drops and stuff, and I don't really like. We have a reputation for holding on to coaches for quite a while. Yeah, so I'm recording this after the finals. I wanted to give a congrats to the finalists, especially the champion, and I also wanted to make sure that I'm getting all the data into these season recaps as I can. So first up, I always start with my draft analysis, so we'll go back and sort of look at what I did way back when. My last edit on this was in October, so kind of wild that the season started in October and now it's February. Time flies when you're having fun, hey? So first up, I drafted Megalodios. Ended up being kind of for me. I didn't use it super well. It looks cool. It's got the stats for a really cool mon, but it ended up having a lot of 4 move slot syndrome for me this season. And I couldn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to because of that 4 move slot syndrome. Super solid mon though. Really good dragon. I love the Lotties, and Latios getting the Mega just sort of makes it a little bit more offensively minded. Although I think that regular Latios can still handle the same defensive capabilities that this does. I'm not sure if I ever really found out what Mega Latios was supposed to wall. I came into the draft sort of thinking, oh, Mega Latios is a great wall and an offensive mon, but I never really found a typing that I could reliably continuously switch into outside of fighting, and I had other fighting checks on the team. So I kind of had fighting really well covered, and Megalodios wasn't able to shine all that well in terms of that. I drafted Conkeldurr. It was the offensive MVP in Season 2. I figured it was definitely worth a round 2 pick, especially in Tier 2 still. I didn't use it super well. It didn't come to a ton of games. It was definitely really strong in the games that it did come to, but I ended up finding it didn't have a ton of matchups, and I think one of the matches I even had to bring it physically defensive as a Zero Aura check, just because I had nothing else that could check Zero Aura. Pardon me. As a Psychic in a fighting, I definitely could have used a better Dark type on this team, I think. Like a much more powerful Dark type probably would have helped out the team a lot and started off a decent core there. Torn-T, it ended up coming to a ton of games. It was a really great pivot for the team. It picked up some kills. It was a really solid Z user. In a lot of matches, I sort of just ran Z Hurricane and clicked it. Definitely love me some Torn-T. Again, great pivot. Speed tier was very helpful on the team too. Whimsicott. I wasn't the biggest fan of Whimsicott, especially as my primary fairy in quotations. This team was definitely lacking a good fairy. And I think the reason for that is because I opted to go for things like Conkeldurr and Torn-T in rounds 2 and 3. Torn-T especially, I probably could have waited on because almost everyone had already taken Tier 1 at that stage and wasn't looking like they had enough free points to take more than the 1 or 2 Tier 1s that they already had. So I probably could have waited on Torn-T a lot later and got a much better fairy off the board. Maybe something like a Mimikyu would have been pretty decent on this team. Alas, I took Whimsicott round 4 instead, and it was not that great. It filled the speed gap between Latios and Torn-T that doesn't really need to be filled anyways, so definitely would have preferred to get either another grass or another fairy. Whimsicott didn't really do much for the team. Bronzong was definitely the defensive MVP of this team. It put in a lot of work defensively. It got like 8 kills or something this season too. Solid rocker on the team. I love Bronzong. Honestly, it's such a good low value steel type. The only problem I had is that it ended up being one of the reasons my team was fairly weak to Ghost. And I did pick up a dark type later on in the draft, which helped with that a little bit. Diggersby was really strong. Diggersby had a lot of great offensive matchups where it just kind of steamrolled teams. You know, it definitely could have beat Jamesy for me this season as well, but that Will-O-Wisp Mega Gardevoir was just really good tech. Love Diggersby. Entei was definitely the most versatile mon on the team. I came into the season thinking I'm just gonna grab an offensive fire. Entei, it's a tier 2 anyways. You know, I'm just grabbing the best fire that's available to me. But it's like, oh yeah, I'll just slap a choice band on it every single week. That definitely was not the case. I ended up using Entei in a lot of different ways, and I was very proud of how I used Entei and how well I used Entei this season. Rotom-Frost was a steal for me in round 8. It was such a good tier 5 pick. Really, really good offensive mon. That's kind of a theme to my team, is that I had a lot of really good offensive threats. And that's what I felt. You know, my team is very highly valued at the beginning of the season. I think the main reason is because I had a lot of, you know, like B tier threats on the team, but all of the B tier threats combined sort of made up for the fact that some teams had like maybe 2 A tier threats, and I'm not just like generalizing tiers in this, I'm just sort of talking about threat levels, right? So like Megalodios is an A tier threat or an A plus tier threat, right? And something like an Excadrill is an A tier threat. But I've got these B tier threats with like Entei, Diggersby, and things like that. Things of that nature. Even Rotom-Frost I would classify as a B tier threat. Just the combo of Ice and Electric is just amazing coverage. You cover the only thing that's immune to Electric with Ice beating Ground, and you cover the grasses switching into Electric type moves as well. And you absolutely nuke any flying type ever. Yeah, but that's sort of what, like, I think that I had enough of these B level threats that sort of counteracted all the teams with these like 2 A level threats and then a bunch of D level threats on their teams. That's sort of just my thought process with it, though. Tentacruel ended up putting in, it didn't come to a ton of games, you know, it was kind of not the ideal water. I definitely really would have liked Primarina on this team, and I was going to take Primarina round 3, or round 4 maybe? Round 4 maybe? Round 3? I think round 3. It got taken right after my Torn-T, and I should have just taken Primarina. It would have eliminated the Whimsicott issue, and I wouldn't have had Tentacruel on the team. But yeah, Tentacruel setting up T-Spikes this season was pretty clutch. It ended up having some decent defensive matchups, but not a ton. It ended up not coming as much as I would have liked it to. You know, Bronzong, Megalodios, Torn-T, and like Entei were kind of staples on my team, and then it was sort of swapping out 2 mons. Diancie, I was really pleased with how Diancie worked out on this team. I needed a flying resist besides Bronzong. I definitely needed a flying resist. I needed a dark resist, so I wanted to grab a second fairy. And Diancie was just such a high value mon in tier 4 at the time. It was a secondary rocker for Bronzong. You know, it checked off a lot of boxes, and it ended up having some pretty decent matchups throughout the season. I was definitely very pleased with Diancie and how it played out for me this season. And then lastly, I picked Pangoro. Definitely was not disappointed with Pangoro either. I didn't get to use Parting Shot all that much. I really thought Parting Shot support would do a lot for the team. But it was a really solid pick as just as a wall breaker, honestly. Like a strong fighting type. And the fact that I had multiple fighting types sort of, you know, streamlined some of the dark types away from coming against my Megalodios. So it ended up working out sort of in my favor. So that was the draft analysis, and that was the team. I didn't make any transactions this season, even though I was planning on making some before the trade deadline just to get rid of Whimsicott because it was such garbage. And I could have very easily gotten rid of Whimsicott for any other grass type, but there weren't a whole lot of options sitting there in tier 3 for me. And I figured I probably would have had to make some extra transactions, like dumping maybe Tentacruel and Whimsicott, picking up or trading Tentacruel for Roserade or something along those lines, and then dropping Whimsicott for a water type or something like that. But, you know, there weren't a ton of options. With 16 coaches, the tier list was definitely a lot more, I don't know what to say, a lot more depleted than other in previous seasons where we've only had 12, and there's been a lot of good stuff still on the board. You know, things like Manaphy were still there, right? I could have dropped Torn-T, but I felt that, and I was very much considering dropping Torn-T, just because I already had enough Levitators to cover the ground weakness. You know, I had Bronzong, Megalodios, and Rotom-Frost all to switch into ground moves, and there weren't other good Mold Breaker mons. Jay had ended up franchising Haxorus, and then he dropped it, and no one picked up Haxorus, and that's really the big Mold Breaker threat is Haxorus. You know, Kyurem Black obviously can hit with Earth Power, but it's not as good as hitting a lot of my mons with Ice Beam. And did I even play Kieran Black? Oh, it was on Ace's team, so I wasn't super threatened by Kieran Black. And then the other main Mold Breaker mon is Pangoro, which I had. So, you know, I was comfortable in sort of like keeping Pangoro on the team and then dropping something like Torn-T for Manaphy. I would have been very comfortable with that because I could still reliably switch into ground type attacks. But I ended up not doing that. And I don't know why, really. I kind of just didn't. And it may have been my downfall at the end of the season. It may not have been. I felt like I played pretty well. At the beginning of the season, I played pretty well down the stretch. And I ended up losing a few games in a row where I just had really bad luck. And we'll sort of talk about that in a sec when I get into the matches here. But here's a sneak peek at the doc for Season 3. This is the rules page, tier list here. So as you can see, it's a little bit more heavily taken up here. So Manaphy was obviously still there, and I could have taken Manaphy. I could have taken Necrozma. I didn't really want another Psychic, though. Actually, I don't know if you can see Necrozma. There you go. Regular Scizor was still there, too. Tapu Fini ended up getting dropped late into the season. I could have taken Tapu Fini. Both of the Thunderuses were there still. Tyranitar was still there. So some decent Tier 1 options here. Volcanion actually got dropped much later on into the season. I don't know if Volcanion is necessarily a Tier 1 threat. Now we're going to look into voting for that mon later on down the line. Aegislash got dropped after week 1. Probably isn't what I would have wanted to put on my team. Dragonite is not really a Tier 1 threat necessarily. Gothitelle and Hawlucha, kind of bad ones. Keldeo would have been pretty amazing on this team. Since drafting in this league, I've drafted Keldeo 3 more times and finished out 2 leagues with it, and Keldeo is pretty amazing. You can kind of just grab a kill with it every single time, and I'm definitely looking forward to using Keldeo more in the future. But that's sort of what happened with the tier list there. Obviously, both of the Megalodies went, kind of high value Megas. I could have dropped Megalodios for something early on. I could have dropped Megalodios for maybe something like Megalopony, and then dropped Torn-T for Manaphy, and gotten a Dragon somewhere else. I'm not sure where, Como in Tier 2 maybe. I'm not sure if there was any other Dragons left in Tier 3. Actually, I could have grabbed Haxorus, yeah. So, there's definitely an option where I could have had a much stronger team than what I did. Actually, I probably would have had to drop Diggersby if I was picking up Megalopony. Maybe Diggersby for Como, something along those lines. Options, and I didn't go with them. Draft tab here just sort of showed the order. We were the 3rd pick, so pretty decent pick. And grabbing Megalodios that early, what I felt was the most broken pick, on the board. I was definitely happy to keep that around. Mew and Celesteela went before Megalodios. I may have taken Celesteela if it had fallen to me. Maybe not. Eternal Floette went really early. The Lando-T pretty early. Garchomp went pretty early, actually, in my mind. But at this stage of the draft, like the S tier picks, mons like Tapu Koko, mons like Celesteela, Megalodios, it's not that bad. Ben grabbed Garchomp, but he could have definitely grabbed something along the lines of, I don't know, Megalopony instead. He grabbed Clefable, ended up grabbing Clefable in round 2, but so transactions-wise, we didn't make any. There was a lot of transactions this season. It was the most transactions I think we've ever seen in the NCL. More trades than ever, too. 3 trades in a season is more than, I think we've only had like 1 trade before, so that's pretty crazy. Here's how the playoffs went down. So Jamesy ended up getting a spot, and he played Hamu. Hamu wheelchaired him out of the server. Hamu made semis, lost to Cade, who had beaten Shade, and so Cade went on to the finals on that side of the bracket. Ben picked Hayden. Ben beat Hayden. Jed haxed out Jay, so Ben played Jed. Really tight match, actually. Could have come down to the wire. This was a really close one. And then Ben ended up beating Jed. And then in the finals, Ben ended up becoming the Season 3 champion and took down Cade in an SD Chomp fest in the end of the final. It was a really long game, but SD Chomp ended up pulling out a pretty strong win for Ben. And so he became the Season 3 champion after being the Season 2 runner-up. So congrats to Ben, and congrats to Cade as well for being the runner-up this season. I'm not sure what else we have to. So standings-wise, look, I was right on the cusp here. It really came down to the last week. Had I won either of my matches against... who was I playing? If I had beaten Cade, I took Cade to a 1-0. If I had beaten Cade, I would have made playoffs because I would have been 8-4, and I had, as you can see, I had a really good differential. So I would have, shot my way all the way up to this like 2nd seed sort of area here and won my division, and maybe have played Hamu. I probably would not have picked Hamu. Had I beaten Hayden, I may have picked Hayden in the playoffs as well, that sort of thing. And then who knows where I would have been from there. You know, if I had picked Hayden, then I'm sitting here. I pick Hayden. It's not going to be Shade in this spot. It's probably Jamesy. And there's maybe a scenario where I beat Jamesy, make it to finals, and who knows what happens from there. I'm not entirely sure what might have happened. I don't really want to theory on that sort of stuff. You know, Cade had an amazing regular season, 11-1 plus 37 is nothing to scoff at. It was really good. It was a really good showing from him. You know, I didn't necessarily have the best season. I ended up picking on some weaker competition to an extent. You know, I ended up beating, out of my 7 wins, 5 of them were against these 3 teams here: Dom, Austin, and Magic. I beat Ace. I beat Tiffany. So, you know, out of the bottom 8 teams in the league, I ended up beating, you know, 5 of them. And then who else? I beat Shade and I beat Jed, who were the 2 teams in front of me as well. So, you know, my losses could have come to better teams, for sure. Had I not missed a Sacred Fire, I would have made playoffs. My Sacred Fire miss against Hayden cost me playoffs, because in that scenario, I don't just lose to Metagross like I did in that game. And I'm definitely making playoffs at that point. You know, I'm not super concerned about it at the end of the day. I ended up playing a pretty decent season. 7-5 plus 11. It was my worst showing in the NCL so far. And obviously, by not making playoffs, I kind of showed that as well. But I can't complain that much. You know, I'm in a lot of other leagues at the same time, and so not making playoffs in one league isn't the biggest deal. You know, you'd always like to make playoffs in your own league and not look average, or the 9th best team in this case. Actually, I was the 8th best team, but because of how we have conferences set up, I was not. I ended up being the 9th place team. So, you know, it sucks to see that sort of stuff happen, but oh well, it's happened to others in the past, and so it was bound to happen to me. That is a change that is going into effect in Season 4. We are moving away from divisions completely, so unfortunately, no matter how lovely I think this looks and how nice the formatting looks in my eyes, we're moving to a solid 1 conference, just a flat table style playoffs with 1 through 16. So it's going to look pretty cool, and I'm excited to see how Season 4 breaks down. You know, this is how the schedule looked. I ended up changing this after Hayden's request, so I've got the hyperlink included for all the matches so that people could go back and watch them pretty easily there. The kill leaders, I ended up putting Entei into the top, well, it was almost in the top 10 with 10 kills, 7 deaths. I came to 9 games and won 6 of them. I really loved the Entei, and then I also had something on here. Bronzong had 8. Bronzong was my next best with 8. You know, we'll talk about that when I get to the other things there. Earthquake ended up winning the season in kills with 52, which is pretty cool. It like almost doubled knockoff. This is the first time Earthquake's actually won in the kill leaderboard. There were a few moves on here that I wasn't really expecting, but Zygarde 50% having an amazing season, sort of threw 1,000 arrows up there. And Zygarde 50 and Zygarde 10% both had a really good seasons. Toxic had a lot more kills than I was expecting, so a lot more Toxic style games. And what else? Hyper Voice. So Mega Gardevoir came back, and so Hyper Voice got a lot of kills. Let's just go straight to our team page here. LL. Yeah, we went 7-5. We won 5 of our conference matches. The only ones we lost were against Ben and Jamesy. Nothing came to all of the games. Wait, did I play all my games or did someone forfeit? No, I played all my games. Okay, so nothing came to every single game, but Torn was the closest. Torn and Megalodios both were really close with 10 and 11 games apiece. You can see it was kind of even on everything else that sort of came. It looked like Torn, Latias, and Entei sort of came to a ton of the games. And then, you know, I had like Diggersby, Bronzong come to a bunch. And then it was pretty evenly distributed between 5 games and 4 games between everything else. So I was pretty proud of how well I sort of, you know, utilized the team over and over again. Whimsicott was definitely the, you can see coming to 5 games, only won 2 of them. Wasn't very helpful this season, but at least everything got at least 1 kill this season. It wasn't up to my standards of sort of having a top kill leader, but Entei hitting double digits was impressive to me at least. Bronzong overperformed in my eyes. Diggersby had a few good offensive matchups. Diancie and Pangoro showed to be kind of average, but they played much more pivotal roles in the games that they came to, especially Diancie. You can see it came to 4 games and won 3 of them. I think that's pretty impressive. Torn obviously came to every single game that I won, and it looks like I won a game without Mega Latias somehow, but there you go. Yeah, I wasn't super surprised with how the team performed. I was a little bit surprised as to how highly my team was ranked, but I wish I could have played better with it, put it that way. See, I went on sort of a tear up to this point. I was 6-2 at week 8, and I was really proud of that. I was looking to be on pace to win playoffs, and then I had a 3-game losing streak. I lost to Cade because of a Flame Body Burn. I lost to Hayden because of a Sacred Fire Miss, and Hamu just wheelchaired me with a Alolan Muck. Not much to say about that. And then I ended the season on a win against Ace in the West Virginia Voltorb. This game may have mattered. I pulled as much differential out of it as I could to make up for the fact that I lost to Hamu, but I ended up not getting any of the scenarios that could have happened. Actually, we'll go back to the standings really quickly here. Or maybe the schedule actually. So, you know, me beating Ace here. There's a scenario where if Hamu beats Jamesy, I make playoffs because Jamesy's also 7-5, but I have a higher differential than him. If Ben beats Shade, I make playoffs because Shade would be 7-5. I have the head-to-head and a better differential than him. And back here, if Cade had beat Jamesy here, it's the same story, and that could have happened at the same time. It would have been the same thing. Had Magic beaten Shade, same thing. Again, I can't really control that sort of stuff, but there were a bunch of scenarios. Or if I had won this game against Hayden as well, same thing. But there were a bunch of scenarios where had I won a game or had someone else won a game, I would have made playoffs. It just didn't work out. Not much to say here, obviously, because I didn't have any free agent transactions, and that's sort of all there is to it there. I had a lot of resistances on the team, 57 resists and only 42 weaknesses. You know, I covered my 4x weaknesses fairly well. I had the 4x weakness to Steel in the Diancie, and I had Bronzong, Tentacruel, and Entei that sort of checked that a little bit better there. I had the 4x weakness to Fairy in Pangoro, which people didn't really exploit because Bronzong, Tentacruel, Entei swapped into Fairy moves quite a bit. Even though my team is relatively weak to Fairy, it didn't end up being that weak to Fairy. And I had the 4x Poison weakness in Whimsicott that got covered by the Tentacruel, Bronzong just by themselves, but also the Diggersby and the Diancie. Oh, sorry, Diancie takes neutrally, but the Diggersby, Tentacruel, Bronzong core. So, you know, this grouping of 3 or this grouping of 3 kind of ended up covering a lot of the main weaknesses that my team had. You know, I had decent water resists in the Whimsicott and the Tentacruel and the Mega Latias as water resists to sort of cover the Diggersby, Entei, and Diancie. So it was a pretty well-rounded team. So here, if you haven't seen my prep docs before, this is what my prep docs look like. I have my base speeds, their max speed. So Torn-T max speed Modest is 341, max speed Timid's 375. And the whole way down. In this league, I don't designate Z crystals because we've open Z rules, but normally if it was a Z user, I'd have an asterisk next to that. Enemy team, if it's in yellow, I expected it to come and it didn't. If it's in green, it came. If it's in orange, I didn't expect it to come and it didn't come. I list out the priority, their hazards, their removal options, and their 4x weaknesses. I list out the day that the match is going to happen, or the week, the day that it's going to happen at the time that I've set. And then I list out what I'm speed creeping so that I know for sure. Having the sprites on here helps me visualize the threats that are on the team and what I need to prep for and what I haven't covered yet. So it's really important that I have this prep doc. It's kind of a comfort blanket for me at this point, having these prep docs, but you know, it's so easy for me to do and pull off that it's not really a comfort blanket because it can't be taken away from me at any point unless I break a computer or something along those lines. But it definitely really helps me prep. I don't know if I'd be able to prep as well as I do without these docs. Yeah, so week 1 we took on Tiff, and this was a really close game. I don't remember everything about the team, but I remember a little bit about the game. I remember Sylveon was a big problem. I ended up clicking Roost with Mega Latias in the Sylveon, and I had nothing to hit it with because I didn't bring Psyshock for whatever reason. Psyshock actually looked decent here, so I'm not sure why I didn't bring Psyshock. I brought Thunderbolt to hit the Celesteela. I could have had Sub Roost Thunderbolt Psyshock would have been an alright set actually against this team. It probably would have done a lot better than I expected. I think I had Bolt Beam to hit the Garchomp too. Garchomp ended up getting cucked by my Tentacruel. I had Shookberry Tentacruel, and I can show the build here. I had Shookberry Tentacruel to live a hit from the Chomp and be able to get an Ice Beam off. T-Spike's absolutely destroyed her team. Same with Rocks. I just spammed Rocks and Heat Spikes. I had Charge Beam Bronzong, so I didn't get walled by the Celesteela, which she didn't even bring Celesteela against my team. I thought it looked okay, but she didn't even bother bringing it. You know, I brought the Scarf Rotom-Frost, put in a lot of work there. Excuse me. I had to have the Foul Play, so I wasn't hard walled by the Alolan Marowak. But it ended up doing a lot of work for me. I was proud of the Rotom set that game. AV Entei put in a little bit of work. I ended up living on something, and then I sacked it to Rocks on the Hitmonlee Rapid Spin or something, so she couldn't get away my T-Spikes and my Rocks. And then it died the turn afterwards. I think I brought in Torn and clicked Air Slash, and it died the turn afterwards. I was Fire EMZ Torn to break the Celesteela. I really prepped hard for the Celesteela, which didn't come. Oh, I was Thunderbolt Dragon Pulse. What? Why? That's whack. I should not have been Dragon Pulse. I absolutely should have been Psyshock. Looking back on it, that was really bad prep having Dragon Pulse over Psyshock there. But Roost Sub, you know, I was really scared of bringing Sub Lottie sets a lot because I played a lot of good Hyper Voice users right at the beginning of the season there. You know, week 2 we played Austin. Not necessarily good Hyper Voice users, but Mega Latias just didn't have the answers that I wanted to have. Rocky Helmet Torn was super good to check things like the Salamence, for example. It was my main answer to the Mega Mawile. It was also a really good answer to the Hitmontop. I think I pivoted into Torn every single time on Hitmontop. He had a very physically biased team. I didn't pick on his Intimidate core with anything, but I ended up picking on his Rotom Wash with my Grassy EMZ Solar Beam Entei set. The goal was to catch the Rotom Wash switching into Entei with the Toxic, and then I could whittle it down enough to Grassy EMZ Solar Beam it. And Rotom Wash is the main thing shutting down Diancie this week, I believe. Diancie was my check to the Salamence. I ended up investing enough to live +1 Adamant Earthquake from Salamence, and I blew it back with a Moonblast, which I was really proud of. You know, I had the Heal Bell on there as well for potential T-Spikes, things along those lines, Will-O-Wisps from the Rotom Wash, I mean. King Keldor ended up cleaning up this game. Weavile was such a problem. I had the Earthquake, Psychic, Reflect type Lottie. It was designed... Why was this not shiny? I swear to God I was supposed to be shiny Latias the entire season, but I didn't bring shiny. That's whack. Okay, well, oh well. I was supposed to pick on the Incineroar switching into Latias, you know, Reflect type the Incineroar's typing, and then nothing could beat me, was the idea with Fire plus Dark. I should have been okay to just beat everything, and I had Psychic for anything not named the Dark types, and I had Earthquake to blast the Dark types with, so... Excuse me. That was the idea behind the Lottie, and it didn't play out, unfortunately, but it could have... Oh, also the Mega Mawile. Taking the Mega Mawile's typing would have just won me the game straight up, besides the Incineroar. And so I was decently happy with how this game played out. I ended up having to sack some stuff to guarantee myself the win, but we pulled out the 2-0 as well against Austin. Week 3, we played Jamesy, and I thought I had this game in the bag. It was a very hyper-offensive matchup from his standpoint, and from mine, realistically. And Life Orb Agility Diggersby could have won the game, but he had Will-O-Wisp Mega Gardevoir that burnt me, and I didn't have the damage output to kill the... I think it was the Darmanitan in the end. No, it couldn't have been Darmanitan. Something lived to return. Araquanid, maybe? Can't remember what it was. But yeah, unfortunately, Diggersby did not pick up the win for us like I thought it would. Just because that Will-O-Wisp, it was a very close game, very tight game. Obviously, I had this Rocky Helmet, Fizdef, King Keldor. This is my Kartana switch in because of the Mach Punch. And I think Araquanid ended up being a huge problem. He brought like a Reflect Araquanid too. It was his main answer to the Entei. I think I caught the Nihilego switching in on a Bulldoze at one point really early on, and he kind of got a little bit fucked by that. Flyinium Z Tornadus didn't get to come off, I don't think. I'm pretty sure I blew it, and he was like AV Zero Aura or something like that as well. You know, I didn't have a ton of good options this game, and so I ended up coming down to a really poor matchup at the end for me against the Mega Gardevoir. He was Dark Z Kartana, which blew through my Bronzong, which would have been my main answer to the Gardevoir. But then I have no idea what I would have set up on. Set up an Agility on with my my Diggersby at the end, because there was still the Zero Aura and the Darmanitan left and things like that. Week 4 we played Magic in the Snowpoint City Blizzard. This 3 attacks Megalodios was gonna go in. I don't even think he brought Mamoswine against me, and I was super scared of it. No, he did. Okay, he did. I must have caught it with a Grass Knot then, with Torn. I don't remember how I dealt with it. I really don't remember how I dealt with it. Maybe Bronzong? I brought Colberberry Bronzong to absolutely hard wall the Mamoswine. There was no reason for him to not be hard walled by it. I was a little bit weirded out that Heatran came against me. I really wasn't expecting Heatran. And Banded Diggersby might have put in work. I can't exactly remember what happened this game. I just remember Eternal Floette not doing anything to my Tentacruel, and Tentacruel kind of bodied it. I didn't realize it got Psychic, and he could have had Psychic on it, but he didn't end up getting it off very quickly. Meloetta didn't do anything, maybe? I can't exactly remember what happened this game. I just remember the prep. Sash Torn was to lead against the Memo, and I'd be able to OHKO it with Grass Knot. Live the crash, OHKO it with Grass Knot, and deal with the rest of his team from there. I don't remember prepping very hard for the Heatran. Looks like I didn't really. Oh well. Week 5 we took on Ben and the Tempe Weasels. I brought this really cool Entei set, Crote, if you want to call it that, with Calm Mind, Lava Plume, Rest, Sleep Talk, and it ended up putting up a lot of pressure on his team. It was very, very well pressuring his walls. And at that stage of the game that I was able to bring it in, it pressured his physical attackers a lot too. He didn't have any special offense that late in the game. And so I could just set up Calm Minds on Clefable over and over and over and over again. And I was setting up Calm Minds on the Slowking over and over and over and over again. And I caught his Mega Houndoom. It was looking really dire for me. Latias was against Slowking or something like that. And I ended up just catching the Mega Houndoom switching in on a Draco Meteor. I was going for a crit Draco Meteor against the Slowking. And he just randomly sacked Houndoom to it. Or it was me randomly clicking Draco Meteor. It didn't really matter either or. My Pangoro got burnt, and I missed a Gunk Shot maybe against the Clefable. Or I missed a Gunk Shot against the Clefable off the top of my head. I remember that. Scarf Diggersby didn't put in as much work as I wanted it to. If I had knockoff for the Gengar, but if I had return, I think I won the game with Diggersby or something, and it just didn't happen because I could have outsped the Aerodactyl and killed it, but I had to lock myself into Ice Punch or something. I don't remember all the exacts of this game. He ended up EVing his Garchomp enough to live a Life Orb Moonblast from Whimsicott, which was the exact spread that I brought. So that was really impressive. You know, my Tentacruel didn't get to do as much as I wanted it to either. It mainly came down to the Entei putting on a lot of pressure against his walls, and him not being able to switch in his physical attackers for fear of them getting burnt by switching into a Lava Plume. So, like, he could have switched in Aerodactyl earlier on against it, but the mind games with when I was clicking Lava Plume versus Calm Mind, it just wasn't safe for him to do it. And unfortunately, we lost this game, and it was a really fun one, and I loved playing this match against Ben. Week 6, we took on Dom. I brought a really cool Entei set this week as well. Weakness Policy Flame Charge set. Then ended up setting up and winning the game. I Flame Charged on, I don't know what it was anymore. I think he brought in, or he had Toxapex. And I was like, okay, well, now it's now or never. He's going to click Scald and pop my Weakness Policy. I clicked Flame Charge or something. I killed something with Flame Charge, maybe? I can't even remember what it was anymore. But I ended up getting up to, like, +2 speed. And I kind of just destroyed his team with it, honestly. The Iron Head broke the Mega Altaria really easily. Stomping Tantrum broke through the Toxapex and Flame Charge. I don't remember ever clicking Sacred Fire this match because I didn't need to. But I had it just in case to break the Umbreon or something. Kamala, maybe? Tangrowth might have eaten +2 Flame Charge or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. I was Normalium Z Diggersby. I never got it off, I don't think, but it was able to set up on Umbreon and get a Normalium Z off and absolutely nuke something was the idea behind it. Scarf Rotom. Again, I don't remember a whole lot about this game. I think I like 4-0'd or 5-0'd him. I think Kinkeldr died. Yeah, I ended up catching a Toxic with Kinkeldr, but Kinkeldr was such a free setup mon against a lot of his team. You know, his team it was very passive and slow, and so it was very easy for me to spring setup threats. You know, mons like SD, Diggersby, Weakness Policy, Flame Charge Entei, and bulk up Kinkeldr, and they were just very easily able to deal with his team. Akaberry Bronzong for like Fire Blast Fire Blast Altaria or Blaziken. I think it was Blaziken, and Earthquake would kill the Blaziken, maybe? I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, it was a pretty whack game. He had like no EVs on Jolteon or something. I don't remember exactly what happened anymore, but there you go. Yeah, that's just what happened. I took on Jed then next, and this was a really close game. It came down to the wire 1-0, all because I basically miscalculated against the Rampardos. Thought I would die with my Pangoro when I didn't, and I should have clicked Drain Punch on it when it clicked Rock Polish, and I clicked Bullet Punch and it lived. Something like that. And I ended up having to live a hit with Rotom-Frost and click Electrium Z. Or maybe I sacked Rotom-Frost or something and got in Pangoro. I don't even remember anymore. I just remember that I got a Rock Polish up at the end of the game and it was super scary. This Skyplate Torn could have put in a lot of work. Mega Aggron didn't even bother coming against me, neither did Melodic. He didn't really bring anything defensive against me like I thought he would. He brought a very offensive team, and Porygon Z almost broke through stuff, but Pangoro was able to live a hit from it. My AV Pangoro was like my best way to deal with that. I brought a Mega Berry Entei, kind of a specially offensive Entei with Shadow Ball for the Shadow Ball for the Latias, HP Water to cover the Rampardos and the Lando and the Rotom. I thought that was kind of cool, running an HP Water set. And then, obviously, you know, Toxicroak's not going to want to switch in, but I had Lava Plume to break through the Mega Aggron. I thought it was a better way to break through Mega Aggron than trying to click Sacred Fire against his team. And having something like Toxic there was able to deal with the Melodic switching into it, initially, at least. Colbur Berry Bronzong, did this do anything? I had it for the Sneasel, and I want to say I didn't live a hit. He was like ICMZ Sneasel. He was Z Sneasel. What did he use it on? Oh, he used it on Latias. Yeah, that's what it was. I was Bolt Beam, Calm Mind, Recover, Latias, and that didn't do as much as I wanted it to either. I just remember Rotom Heat being a huge problem for my team. Oh well, memories are gone. This is months ago. This is 2 months ago I played this match. Week 8 we took on Shade, and we picked up the W here as well. I brought Sash, Spikes, Endeavor, Diggersby, led with it, and took his Mega Gallade down really early on. Because of Sash Endeavor Quick Attack. Actually, I think I just like flat out clicked Earthquake into Quick Attack and took it down turn 2, and he clicked SD or something. Like, he didn't even attack me, and I still had my Sash intact and got up a layer of Spike. Kebia Berry Whimsicott was designed to take on the Zygarde 10%. It ended up extreme speeding me and killed me. I brought a Torn-T, which was meant to deal with the Mew in particular, as well as the what was I, Taunt Fly Z? Yeah, okay. So Z Hurricane kind of just claimed a kill against his team when Circuitry wasn't brought. And Bisharp showed up, so this is kind of a decent way to deal with Bisharp too. I ate a knockoff at the very least. My Mega Lottie kind of could have done some work, didn't, though. I don't recall it doing any work at all. He brought like a weird special Crobat, so he brought like Dark Pulse Crobat and Dark Pulse Mew. And I brought Double Fairy, so that was kind of weird. My Banded Entei ended up claiming a kill because he didn't bring Blastoise. So Banded Entei looked amazing against him, and it kind of just clicked Sacred Fire against the Cofagrigus. He brought like a Life Orb or a Nasty Plot Cofagrigus Berry Nasty Plot, I think. And then Pixie Plate, Rock Polish, regular Diancie ended up securing the win for me. It was a really strong win con for me late game. And honestly, it looked like it just tore through his team from Team Preview. He brought Meganium Z for the first time the entire season against me, and that was kind of cool. Week 9, we took on Cade, and he burnt my Conkeldurr with his Volcarona's Flame Body. I am confident that I won that game had I not been burnt with the Conkeldurr because I was running Iron Fist and not Guts. And if I had an Iron Fist Mach Punch for the Zygarde late game, I could have cleaned that up. But Zygarde ended up cleaning me up at the end of all of it. Mega Diancie got caught by something. I don't even remember what it was now, but Mega Diancie died to something. Oh well, who knows? Oh, I brought the Fly Tornadus Therian was really strong against his team. He was not expecting it, and there's a lot of mind games at the end. He didn't bring a lot of the fat that I was expecting. I broke Zapdos somehow. Electrium Z Rotom, maybe? I think it might have been Electrium Z Rotom that I just nuked his Zapdos with. And he didn't let Mega Latias do anything. Sock was kind of a waste of space this game. I think Latias switched into it, and then Torn switched into it, or something along those lines. Shuka, Tentacruel. Oh, I actually lived the hit from Excuse me. I lived the hit comfortably from Zygarde with the Shuka Tentacruel, but Ice Beam just didn't have the damage output to do as much as I wanted with it. I brought like triple resistance berries. I didn't like this matchup very much, and I had the protective pads on Torn-T so I wouldn't get staticked by the Zapdos. I think he brought pressure anyways, but yeah, I could have avoided the static para with protective pads there. I brought a bunch of resist berries because it was a bad matchup for me, and if you've got a bad matchup, it's better to just bring the resist berries and sort of claim a kill on something that they're not expecting, catch them off guard, and then maybe it turns into your favor. Week 10, I played Hamu. I got absolutely fisted by Cursalol and Muck, and I prepped very poorly this game. As you can see, I had 0 defog on this team, no removal. Let's go back to my team page here. Look at all the removal options that I have. I've got all of these removal options, and I didn't bring a single one. And you know what he did? He ended up spike stacking me with Skarmory. And I got absolutely fisted by the Alolan Muck because of that. I couldn't do anything against it. I was in a really shit spot. Diggersby was basically my only way to deal with it. He preserved Dugtrio in the back despite me being Shed Shell Diancie. And it was just all around a shit game. I hated myself for playing this game. And I did not enjoy how I played this game. I didn't even claim a single kill. He 6-0'd me. It was not what I wanted to have happen in my first game against Hamu. Week 11, we played Hayden, and again, this one came down to Sacred Fire Miss. It probably shouldn't have, but it did. He ended up sacking his Metagross, which was his win con to my Entei. Actually, there was another couple pieces of this game. So, he tricked my Bronzong with his Latios. I killed his Latios. He brought in Beedrill and clicked Poison Jab and gave it to me again. So Bronzong got 2 kills for free. And then he ended up almost sacking his Metagross for no reason against my team too. That one was really strange to me. I didn't understand it. You know, Silk Scarf Diggersby almost put itself in a position where I could win the game, but the P2 was too fat for me to break. And it, you know, I had Toxic on my Entei. If I hit the Sacred Fire against the Metagross, I kill it. He was like a weakness policy set, but he wasn't living the hit was the problem. He was not living the hit. He didn't even bother bringing the Rotom Wash this time. I was trying to catch it with the Toxic. He picked it up afterwards, and like Whimsicott was my best way to beat it, but he didn't bring it. I was the Sash Torn-T again. I was able to deal with Blacephalon by keeping my Sash intact. His floor just got roasted by something. I don't even remember what it was. Psyshock from Latias or something. Who knows? Actually, you know what? It was Diggersby. Diggersby roasted the floor just, I think. But, you know, like, if that Metagross dies, then my Entei's still alive to Toxic the Porygon, and he had nothing for Entei on his team. The team that he brought, after I killed Latios, he had nothing to switch into Sacred Fire. Blacephalon still gets 2-shot by Sacred Fire, by the way. So it was a bad situation, and this ended up costing me playoffs. And then week 12, we played Ace, and this was probably one of the easier games I've played. He ended up bringing a lot of weird-ish sets, and I just sort of capitalized on it with my Mega Latias. I brought Calm Mind 2 attacks. Never had to click Calm Mind, it just got a lot of kills. Banded Entei picked up some kills by itself too, and I believe Tentacruel switched into a few things by itself. So that was kind of how the season played out for me. So let's look at the kill leaders and stuff that I had throughout the season. Everything that I had this season is going to be highlighted in yellow. I've expanded this a little bit since you've last seen it. I have championships on here now to see, you know, some mons that I have been consistently on championship teams. Mimikyu, obviously up there. I've used it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons of play with Mimikyu. 83 kills over 45 games. Really impressive stats with Mimikyu there. Yeah, we've got to scroll down a little bit to find the first mon, but here's Tornadus, Therian, and Entei. Both of them hit 10 kills. I would definitely draft both of them in the future. I haven't been that successful with Torn-T. It's come to 16 games. Only has 9 deaths, though, in 16 games, so, you know, it's been okay as a pivot. Entei, same thing. Bronzong was amazing. I've drafted it twice now, and I have no complaints whatsoever about Bronzong. Amazing budget steel type for sure. Mega Latias, I don't know if I would draft it again. I'm kind of on the fence about it. Probably not, but maybe. Diggersby was a really good offensive threat. I love it as a value pick. You know, I don't necessarily think it's the top of tier 2, but it's a pretty decent tier 2. I would definitely take it again in a tiered draft, maybe not in points. Kinkeldr, I didn't find the success that I wanted to find with it, but it was still really strong. I do believe that it probably is either a tier 2. I think that Phil probably overperformed with it in season 1, and that it was a good thing we left it in tier 2. I'm not entirely sure though. Rotom-Frost was amazing. I loved this Mon. It was so good for me. Regular Diancie, I'm a big fan of too. I had so much fun using regular Diancie and Pangoro. I loved all three of these. Really strong Mons in their own right. Really good budget picks, honestly. Like, this is our tier 5, tier 2, tier 4s, and they were some of the most fun that I had on the entire team. I had Tentacruel on the team. I was fairly impressed with Tentacruel overall. It ended up being a little bit more offensively minded than I wanted it to be that season, and that's mainly because what? This is MWPA Season 6. There we go. Nope, not SSBL Season 1. Just Season 6. Whoops on the stack attacker there. Yeah, Tentacruel, I got 3 Toxic Spikes kills with it, so it it didn't show to be that offensively minded, but it kind of was. 1.2 kills a game is not bad at all. And then as we go down, the last Mon on my list is Whimsicott. I was not pleased with Whimsicott, and I would probably never take it again. I had it in the GDS Invitational as well, the Tier 3 and below thing, and I wasn't super thrilled with Whimsicott whatsoever. So, yeah, well, I also added this Records tab, so you can see this now. You can see we went 7-5 plus 11 in the season, had no playoff performances. And then these are my current leagues going on right now. Oh, I gotta add something in here after I'm done recording. Yeah, so that is it for me, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the NCL Season 3 recap. We will be back for Season 4. Whether or not I upload is to be determined, but I probably will because I've uploaded 3 seasons of this league, so why not upload a 4th? And yeah, so keep your eyes peeled. I'll be in the Zebstrika division, as I was not bad enough to get demoted to Blitzel, as we expand to the 2 leagues. And yeah, I'll catch you guys for NCL Season 4.